when people say that Android is Linux, unquote, that what firstly that implies that they're confused, because when most people are talking about quote Linux, unquote, what they're actually incorrectly referring to the operating system called GNU/Linux, which is a combination of the collection of tools created by the GNU project, also called, and the GNU operating system, and the Linux kernel. Now, actually, in fact, Android has neither of these. The user space tools are actually completely rewritten. They're all Google specific, and the user space, in a normal GNU/Linux distribution, the entire user space is actually, in fact, not you would expect that the user space would be compiled entirely against glibc, the GNU-C library, where in fact Google's user or C library. Well, firstly, they more or less are using a complete rewrite of the standard C library, which is derived from uclibc, of making Android as incompatible with all previously existing software as possible. And they did this in a number of ways. Basically, through from the driver model up through the user land, they completely changed it in a way that makes it incompatible with previously existing applications. As I mentioned, they changed the driver model, for one thing, to include Google's Wakelocks model. And that wouldn't be such a big deal, because it's basically to convert a driver from the mainline kernel to being operable on the Android kernel and vice versa. It's very trivial to do. However, the problem is that hardware manufacturers are actually allowed, and the normal practice is to only release what's called binary blobs, where they're the drivers for commercial hardware that runs Android is completely proprietary and closed source. So what ends up happening is that not only are you forced to only run Android, but in many cases, particularly, for example, my previous phone, the Samsung Galaxy S, you obviously couldn't even recompile the Samsung's drivers to run on whatever version of the Android kernel you wanted, because you would obviously, between major kernel versions, the application binary interface is not consistent in even the original or the real Linux kernel.